Hello, and welcome to Sobercast. We provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in a podcast format. We are an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into the virtual basket. Also, if you're a member of NA or have friends that are, please tell them about our other podcast, NAPOD. NAPOD features NA speakers and workshops in the same format as Sobercast. We upload a new speaker every day, and it's easy to subscribe by searching for NAPOD, N-A-P-O-D, all one word, on any podcast player app, or go to napod.xyz if you'd like to listen online. Hope you enjoy the podcast and have a great day.
Like that in the morning. I'll say, good morning. We love you! Just standing outside my bedroom. I am so excited to be here. This is amazing. I feel so honored and so grateful. And I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank all of the people here in Saratoga that put this together and have welcomed me just so graciously. And to everybody that's here, and it's been so nice. I had a beautiful dinner with some folks from Savannah, Georgia. They were fantastic, and you know, like, it's the same experience I have no matter where I go in AA, which is that I'm just welcomed with open arms. You know, just this beautiful experience, and I feel really grateful for that, and I'm really grateful to be here tonight. So, my home group is in New York City. It's on Thursday night. It's called Big Book Magic. If you're ever in Manhattan on a Thursday night at 7:45, we'd love to see you. Stop on by. We talk about the Big Book sometimes. And I got sober in June of 2006. I guess those are the vital signs. So, I'll start with, I think it's always good to talk to people who may be just coming to AA for the first time. And if this is your first experience of AA, I mean, this is it. This is major. And you're really lucky. And anybody who is a drunk in Saratoga is really lucky, because what you guys have got here is extraordinary, and you're really lucky. And I'm sure that a lot of people hear the message that you guys have. But it's weird, right? AA is a little bit weird. It's a little bit weird. Yeah, not just this. I mean, all the chanting and stuff, that's weird. But I mean actual AA. Like, AA is, we're like, what's going on in AA? And how does what's going on in AA help people like us? I mean, when I decided that I wasn't going to go to AA, right? I was sitting on my parents' couch, and my family was sort of having an intervention. They were saying things like, "We love you, and you can't keep doing this. You just can't. Yeah, please stop drinking. Well, or just don't drink for a little while, or just cut back. Could you just drink less?" And by the end of the conversation, I was like, "I'm an alcoholic. I can't stop. What don't you understand about that?" And they suggested, my mom said, "Well, why don't you go to AA?" And I got into one of my favorite fights that I've ever been into with my brother. And the fight this is a perfect fight for brothers to have. I said, "I don't want to go to AA because they're going to try to make me find God." And my brother said, "AA doesn't have anything to do with God." And I said, yeah, that's the 12th step. You work all the steps and then you get to God. And it turns out I was closer to right than he was. But it turns out that God's at the beginning of the steps. I thought they'd at least hold off till I got to the end of them. But, so there I was on my parents' couch, and I was being offered this solution. I was being offered a solution to a problem that I knew I had and was obvious to me and everybody around me, and I didn't really want to take it. There's a part at the beginning of the chapter, We Agnostics, this is the 4th chapter of the Big Book, and it says, that sometimes this decision that we have to make between dying, essentially, and accepting spiritual help is a really hard decision to make. Well, that's crazy. Why is that a hard decision to make? Like, you want to live or you want to die? Well, when am I going to die exactly? How many more drinks could I have? Am I going to die next Tuesday? Because if I'm going to die next Tuesday, that's like a weekend of drinking. In between now and then, I think I'm going to hold out for a couple more cocktails. And that was what was going on in my mind. That was the experience that I was having as I was sitting there and I was sort of being offered something. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to take it. And, my story, I got lucky. I went to the doctor. I told the doctor I was an alcoholic. I asked him for help. He sent me to an outpatient rehab. I said, sure, I'll do that. I don't want to do AA. And I got to the outpatient rehab. I signed up for 8 weeks. I said, I'll stay in this and I'll do it for 8 weeks. And they said, if you don't start going to AA, we're going to kick you out. And I couldn't face getting kicked out of rehab. It's like, I just couldn't do it. And so I started going. And it was weird. It was weird, and it didn't make any sense. And I'll tell you why it didn't make any sense. Because when I got to AA, I had a whole lot of problems that were material problems, and they seemed like things that I needed material solutions for. Right? I had problems like I couldn't find a boyfriend. I wasn't famous, and I wanted to be. I didn't have enough money. Those are the problems that I came to AA with. I showed up in AA, and not drinking. Listen, drinking was a problem. I was a real dramatic drinker. I get real wasted and get into trouble and all that. But my life, my problems, the reasons that I drank. Drinking was a problem, but drinking was for the most part a solution to my problems. My problem as an alcoholic is not alcohol. My problem is when alcohol's not there. That's when I start having problems. Right? Because alcohol works for me. Up into a point. Right? And so for a lot of my life, alcohol was the solution to my problems. I know when I got to AA, it was pointed out to me that there's these promises that you get, and if you're new to AA, you'll find out all about the promises, but they essentially something, it's sort of what happens to your life after you get to the 9th step. And there's things like you'll find a new freedom and a new happiness. You'll intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle you. You'll no longer be afraid. These were exactly the things that alcohol did for me. When I drank, I had a new freedom and a new happiness. When I drank, fear of finances, of other people, disappeared. When I drank, I was released into this place of ease and comfort. And then I went into a blackout and I got arrested. If only I could have figured out a way to just stop that moment after I found ease and comfort. And that's the trouble with alcohol, for me, is that as an alcoholic, I have a different response. My body physically has a different response to alcohol than other people. And so if you're new to AA, and you're just coming here and you're working with somebody, maybe you're going to meetings and you're listening to people talk, the first thing that you try to do in AA is figure out if you're an alcoholic or not. And I think a lot of times it's easy to sort of slide past that one, right? If you're in AA, you're probably an alcoholic. That's not really the case, right? It's probably actually pretty easy to end up in AA and not be an alcoholic. Because the thing about alcohol is it messes up your life regardless of whether you're an alcoholic or not. You can get really wasted and do dumb things. Still not be an alcoholic. See, alcoholics have a couple of things in common with each other that you can start to relate to. You can start to listen to people's story and you can start to say, now do I have that thing? That powerlessness that they're talking about. And the powerlessness that alcoholics have come in essentially two forms, right? The first is that when we start drinking as alcoholics, oftentimes, not always, but a lot of times, this physical craving takes over, the phenomenon of craving. There's literally a physical allergy, they call it in the big book. Right? An allergy just means an abnormal reaction to alcohol. That means that what happens to me is different than what happens to everybody else. I love this story. You hear it in AA sometimes. It's about a room full of people who all get drunk. So let's say we all get wasted right now, right? It's a disaster. I bet most of you drink vodka and Red Bull. So everybody gets wasted, right? And let's assume that we're all alcoholics in this room, and everybody gets wasted. There's going to be a lot of different things going on. Right? There's going to be a lot of things going on. There's going to be people hooking up in the back corner. There's going to be somebody naked running across with their banner and like, come to Buffalo! There's going to be a lot of different things. There's going to be somebody crying. There's going to be somebody laughing. There's going to be somebody fighting. But every single person in this room who is an alcoholic is going to have one thought in common. Where's the next drink? That's the phenomenon of craving. The phenomenon of craving looks like me standing at a bar at 2 a.m. when they've called last call, begging the bartender for just please. I don't think you understand. Just give me one last pint glass full of whiskey. No ice. Seriously, I don't need any ice. No, it's not weird. Just fill it up and put a straw in it. And that is powerlessness. That's what it means to be powerless. Well, when I got to AA, I understood that. I understood what it meant to be powerless because that had happened to me. That had happened to me over and over and over again. That phenomenon of craving. But I started to read the big book and I started to work with a sponsor, and what happened was a light was turned on. Another part of powerlessness was explained to me. And it was in a very simple way when my sponsor looked at me, after hearing all of my stories about all of the mess that I had caused when drinking. And he looked at me and he said, you were sober every time you took the first drink. That's where my problem is as an alcoholic. Because if my problem was just that when I drank, I couldn't stop drinking, and then I kept doing it, I just wouldn't do it. That's a pretty easy solution. The problem for me as an alcoholic is that I have this mind that forgets what it was like. I have a mind where there is a curious mental blank spot, where all of my self-knowledge, where all of my self-will, where all of the things my mom has cried to me about, where all of the things that my teachers have begged me to stop, where all of the things that everybody in my life has said, don't do it, when I had time and time again shown myself that alcohol doesn't work for me. And then I go like, you know what, like maybe I'll just have a drink. It's Tuesday. That's a good reason. So here I am, right, with no defense against the first drink. No defense. And I didn't even know that. To be quite honest with you, I didn't really understand what it meant to have no defense against the first drink because I really felt like I was deciding to drink again. Right? Like sometimes powerlessness feels like I just changed my mind. Like drinking was a really bad idea, obviously. I ended up in the hospital, and I remember one time I get in the hospital, I'm 19, drank myself into a blackout, I was passed out. They found me in this office building where I did an internship, and I was laying and did an office party, and I had found my way to the kitchen where they had the extra beer, and the fridge door was open, and I had a Heineken bottle, which I'm not a pop-off, in my tea, and I was blue, and I was passed out, and the cleaning woman found me, and they called the ambulance, and I woke up in the hospital, and I was strapped to the bed because I'd been fighting with the paramedics, and my mom's standing at the end of the bed, and she's crying. Now, the thing is that this had happened to me before. This is not the first time that this exact same scenario had happened, right? But I thought, well, this time, I'm a bit older, and I'm sort of like, I'm learning, like, okay, it took me a couple times. With this, I got an idea. I'm going to take a piece of the IV cord, and I'm going to make a bracelet out of it. It's a very good idea. I'm going to make a bracelet, and I'm going to wear that bracelet always. And that bracelet will remind me what a disaster it is when I drink. And then I came out of the blackout with the bracelet on. I have no defense against the first drink. And what happens, that cunning, baffling part of alcoholism, is that when I start drinking again, it didn't really feel like a struggle. It just sort of seemed like a good idea. I mean, I used my own mind to convince myself of like 11 different things. Like, well, here are the reasons why I think it's okay that I drink now. Yet if you looked at my story, if you looked at what had happened to me as a result of drinking, it was obvious to anyone what was going to happen next. So there I am, I'm powerless, right? Good thing I discovered that in AA. Because the second thing that AA offers us, once they enlighten us to this powerlessness that we suffer from, is a solution. The second step, came to believe in a power greater than ourselves. Right? So all of a sudden AA says, well listen, we know that you're powerless, so that stinks, sorry about that. You're probably not going to be able to drink again. But there is a power. There is a power that can come into your life and restore you to sanity. It can actually stand in the way of that stupid thing you keep doing, which is drinking. Oh, okay, cool. I'll take it. But what are you talking about? Yeah, God, man, God. Like, get into God. Yeah, God will restore you to sanity. It's awesome. Oh, okay. I'm not really feeling. Am I supposed to think? Is this something that's supposed to happen in my head? Because I still pretty much think about God the way that I thought about God before I got in here, which is like, probably not. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And, yeah. And then they say, no, actually, don't worry about that. We'll tell you what to do. What to do is, you're going to follow these instructions. We're going to do a couple of things. We're going to take some actions. We're going to work the steps. And as a result of working the steps, what's going to happen is that you're going to come out on the other side of working the steps, and you're going to have had an experience of God. So God is going to be something that's no longer stuck up in your head, shaking around, trying to become a definition or explanation. God is no longer going to be some abstract thing that you're trying to wrap your head around. You're actually going to feel the presence of God in your life. God is going to move from your head to your heart. You're not going to have to talk about God because you're going to know God. You're going to know God in a way that's personal to you. All right, sign me up. So I did it. So I worked the steps. And something happened. Something happened that it's hard to explain. It's hard to talk about, right? Because it's an experience. Something you have to see for yourself. And I have to tell you this. I was talking to somebody earlier before the meeting, and we were talking about the right way to do AA. And I love talking about the right way to do AA. Because I went through the steps the first time with a guy who was incredibly spiritual, an incredibly beautiful man. And he took me through the steps, and we got to we sort of read the big book sometimes. And we got to my fifth step, and he listened to me talk, and he pointed out a couple things, and he showed me some stuff in that fourth column. And we got ready to do my sixth and seventh step, and he brought out this big glass bowl, and he set it down in the middle of the living room floor, and he lit my fourth step on fire, and he started chanting a Native American chant, and I started singing, and we were both crying, and the flames were coming up, and there's smoke everywhere, and it was one of the most beautiful, transformative experiences I've ever had in my entire life. And it is not anywhere in the big book. Not one place. And it was a beautiful experience. I was transformed. I was changed. But then what happened was people started to see that change in me. And people started asking me, like, hey man, can you sponsor me? Can you work with me? Can you take me through the steps? I want what you have. That looks good. I like what you got. Yeah, totally. I'm in. Let's do it. Let's go have dinner and talk about this. Okay, cool. So we're sitting there at dinner, and they're like, I want what you have. I'm like, great. Yeah, it's amazing. It's really amazing. And you're like, what should I do? Man, I don't know. I don't have anything I can light on fire right now. But listen, you gotta just keep coming back, because maybe let me introduce you to my sponsor. Because he did it for me. Like, it really, whatever that was, that worked. And so I started to having had a spiritual awakening. As a result of the steps, I was in a lot of ways unable to transmit the experience that I'd had, even though I'd had it. And right about that time, I moved to New York City, and I started working with a guy who had worked out of the big book a lot. And he took me through the book, and he read it page by page, and I had one of the most profound experiences that I've ever had in my life, which is that I started to recognize in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous the story that had happened to me. The way that I drank, the way that I had thought, and then the way I had gotten sober. It was all spelled out. So all of a sudden, having had the experience, it was like being given a map. It's like being given a roadmap. And the great thing about a roadmap is that I can show other people direction. So all of a sudden, I started to be able to take other people and have them have the experience that I've had. And I've been really fortunate to sponsor a lot of people, and there's just an absolute honor. Just absolute honor in having somebody ask you to sponsor them. And if you haven't had that experience yet, stick around, because that's where for me the program has really started to work in my life. But I have to tell you something that it is an ego-feeding proposition, especially if they're really good-looking and young and they have a good job. And they're like barely, what if they said, they nipped it before they got the ringer or whatever the thing is, the boat. Like, these are people that are like just barely had alcoholism, so they come in and they're all like swank. And they're like, I want what you have. And they're like, seriously, because I don't want what you have. And it's really hard, because all of a sudden you're sort of like here you are, and people are calling you and asking you, how they should live their lives. Oh man, this is a real deal. Like, people depend on me. Wow. And it's easy. It's easy to get lost, or it was for me. It was easy for me to get lost in this idea that I was doing something. And about 2 years ago, I was working with a guy who had a lot of trouble, and he'd been in and out. And we started working together, and he was extraordinary. This guy was like really sharp, and he was really outgoing and social and just beautiful guy. And we worked together, and we were like doing it right, like out of the book, and following the instructions. And he was following the instructions, and one day he didn't show up. He didn't call me. About a week later, I hear that he's gone. He's missing. Nobody can find him. His phone's turned off. And about a month later, I was actually at an AA conference down in Florida. And the meeting was about to start. It was about a minute before the meeting started. And somebody walked up to me and they said, he jumped out of a hotel window last night and killed himself. And all of a sudden, I realized that I cannot take that responsibility on. I cannot. Which means that I cannot also take credit. All of the work that's done with me is done through me. The only thing I can ever be is a channel for God's message. The only thing that I can ever do is hope to be an instrument in some way of some other power in my life. And whether that means that I'm carrying the experience that I've had, or I'm carrying the message of AA, I don't get to take credit for any of this. The same way that I don't get to take credit for me stopping drinking, which I'd love to do. I love that when you go to regular people parties, and they're like, oh my God, you haven't drinking in how long? You're amazing. And they're like, yeah, totally. They're like, your willpower is so strong. And you know, like it's like a cocktail party, so you don't want to like, well, actually, I don't have any willpower whatsoever. As far as the drink is concerned, I've got no willpower whatsoever. I am without defense against the next drink. You're like, what? And then it really starts to blow people's mind if you start talking about alcoholics and the choice to drink. And this is another thing that I was about 4 years sober, and I thought I had a real good understanding of what it meant to be powerless. And I heard a guy give a talk, and he said, if you are an alcoholic, if you are powerless over alcohol, and you are not drinking, then you can't drink. Because some other power other than you has come into your life and arrested this obsession. The obsession has been lifted. So where alcohol is concerned, you have no choice. Oh, what? I mean, I know I wasn't like responsible for my sobriety. I was God, I was working in my life, it was like coming between me and drink. But this idea that I actually could not drink because I have no choice. The power to choose has been taken from me. And all of a sudden, I started to recognize the true miracle that's happened in my life. That I had gone from a person who didn't know how to live without alcohol and sat there on my parents' couch and couldn't have imagined what it would be like to not have that thing that I held so dear. And here I was, like, I don't even want to drink. Drinking doesn't even make any sense to me, in fact. Because what I've got works so much better. The life that I have is so much better than the life that I had when I was drinking. I'll just tell just a quick drinking story. The last, maybe two. The last time that I got drunk, I was on a camping trip in southwestern Pennsylvania. I was with about 40 of my closest friends. The people that I love most dearly. I was very, very social, even at the end there. And we were going whitewater rafting. And I had started drinking we were going to go rafting on Saturday, and I had started drinking on Friday night, or Thursday or whatever, but I was drinking on Friday night. Still drinking. And I got into a fight with my brother, and I had really started to pound, like after the fight, and he had gotten up and left on Saturday morning. And I just was furious, and I was drinking, and it's probably at this point like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm drinking Jack Daniels out of the bottle. Right? It's a camping trip. Like, this is like it doesn't count as morning drinking if you woke up in a tent. So I go into a blackout, and I go down, and I'm trying to get onto the raft. And the guys at the rafting company are trying to keep me from getting on the raft. And so I jump into the river with all of my clothes on, and I'm like, I go down the raft, or something. I completely made that up because I was in a blackout. So I'm going to fill in here sort of what I imagine I was saying. Maybe slightly exaggerated. I was probably more like, so I jump in the river, and this guy, I think he might have been a park ranger, who comes and gets me, throws me over the front of the kayak, and he rows me to the shore, and I attack him. And so they call the police, and the police come, and I attack the cops when they get there. And that's no good. And so I end up in the handcuffs in the back of a police car. And I end up down. I sort of come out of the blackout. I vaguely remember being in court, but I come out of the blackout, and I'm in the prison shower, like up against the wall, being sprayed down with a hose. I'm covered in delousing powder, and it's just awful. Right? Like, just awful. I mean, listen. I had a lot of fantasies about prison showers for a long time. There has never been delousing powder. And that's the unmanageability of my life. I just couldn't get it quite the way I wanted it. So I get sprayed down and deloused, and I get put into an orange jumpsuit, and they take me in to make my phone call. And of course, I have a cell phone, which I probably jumped in the river with, so I can't use that. And I don't know anybody's number. All you do is like go to the thing and push somebody's number. So I didn't know, my sister was with me, and I didn't know her number. I wanted to call her. So I called the only number, literally to this day, the only phone number that I really know was my parents. And it just so happened, interestingly enough, that my brother and sister-in-law had left the camping trip, had gone back to my parents' house, and were at that very moment trying to convince my parents that I had a drinking problem. To which my parents were saying something that they often said. It's like, I think he's just going through a phase. Like, it's just a thing. And I called drunk from prison. Mom, I gotta talk to you about something. Don't worry. I'm not with you. And my mom gave me my sister's cell phone number, and I wrote it down. And I hung up the phone. I said, okay, I'm ready to make my phone call. And the guy said, that was it. And I said, no, listen, man. Like, I don't think you understand. Like, I was kind of drunk. It's been a rough day. Like, I'm sober up now. Like, let's talk about this, like adults. You know, like, let's work this out. I need to make this other phone call so I get this straightened out. And like, he's like, no, I don't think you understand. You're going to jail. That's all that's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. You're not going to get treated differently than anybody else. Phew. Really? I was imagining that I would. And so they put me in the shackles around the wrists and around the ankles and an orange jumpsuit, and I'm walking down the hallway. Or they don't call it a hallway. I don't know what they call it. Somebody knows out here, I'm sure. But I'm walking down or whatever, and there's all the cells lined up, and these guys are yelling at me right out of the cell, like, hey! Tomahawk! I had like a mohawk at the time. Hey, Tomahawk! What you in here for? Oh, this is the cop. He says, maybe I bit a police officer. You know, again, this story is like, we'll just say attacked. Because then I won't have to get that stuff later when I said I lied during my qualification. I think I bit him, or tried to bite him. But he attacked a police officer. Oh, Tomahawk, you crazy! Tomahawk, you crazy! And it was in this moment that I slowly started to have this realization there are not two different kinds of jails. Like, there are not jails for bad people who have done bad things and other jails for good people like me who have accidentally just messed up when they're drunk. There's just one kind of jail. And all of a sudden, that thing that people that always talk about in AA, this idea that I was being judged not on my intentions, which were always so good, but on my actions. And that my actions didn't line up with the person that I was capable of being. How awful is that? To feel like we're not being the person that we were supposed to be in this world. That's what alcohol does to me. Alcohol robs me of my ability to just be myself. It's stolen. I no longer get that chance. And because of the intervention of God in the program of AA, I haven't had to have a drink since that day. And I'm so incredibly grateful for that. But there's something else that AA has done for me, and other than completely blow my mind, which is enough, right? Which is that I got to I went through the steps, right? That first time, everything's lit on fire, it's beautiful, have a transformative experience, and I was about a year and a half sober. And something was very wrong in my life. And it was that I didn't have what I wanted. That's how I felt. And every morning I'd wake up, just pour me a pot of self-pity. Like, I've done everything you people have asked me to do, and I still don't have a boyfriend. I mean, really. And so I was quite vocal about this. I was complaining. I was in meetings. I was raising my hand and I was saying, I'm so lonely. Like, I'm just so lonely. And, oh, man, like, gosh, it's just awful. And I remember one guy said to me, he said, sobriety is the gift. And I almost punched him. But somebody came up to me. This guy came up to me after the meeting that I've been sharing about this loneliness. And he said, so what's the problem? And I said, I said it. I'm lonely. I don't have a boyfriend and I'm lonely. And he said, well, what's the problem with that? I said, I'm lonely. I don't want to feel lonely. He said, oh, okay, so you feel the way you don't want to feel. I said, yeah. He said, why don't you just stop being lonely? Well, I just thought, if I get a boyfriend, I'll stop being lonely. He said, why don't you just stop being lonely? I said, man, listen, you're going to have to listen real hard. I'm lonely because I don't have a boyfriend. When I get the boyfriend, I'll stop being lonely. He said, why don't you just stop being lonely? And I said, because if I stop being lonely, it'll mean I don't want a boyfriend. Whew. What? I heard myself say that. He said, really? If I stop being lonely, it will mean I don't want a boyfriend. He said, well, listen, then you're definitely not going to stop being lonely. In fact, you're going to wallow in it. Because the lonelier you are, the more it means you want to be loved. You're going to make sure every single person you come into contact with knows exactly how lonely you are. Because it is vitally important to you that you're loved. And the loneliness that you feel, the loneliness that you're wallowing in, is the very thing that you're holding on to as evidence of how badly you want to be loved. See, that's what the 6th and 7th step are about. The 6th and 7th step are about becoming entirely ready to be free of these defects of character. Loneliness, despair. Right? Become free of that. Well, you can't become free of it unless you see how you're using it. And when you see how you're using it, you can become willing in that 6th step to disconnect those things. And the 7th step prayer becomes something like, God, in freedom from loneliness and freedom from despair, keep me aware simply of my desire to love and be loved. Because I always thought I needed those things. All those things that end up in the 4th column of my 4th step, fear, envy, shame, anger, all those things are all these useless tools of self-reliance. They're these things that I'm convinced that I need in order to be happy. There's 2 delusions they talk about in the big book. The first delusion is that somehow, some way, we're going to be able to drink like other people, and that has to be smashed. That happened pretty well for me, right? It's the first step. Second delusion, a little bit tricky. Second delusion is that we can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only we manage well. Right? So it's like this. I'll give you I love a metaphor. It's like I'm running, right? And I'm running, and I'm sweating, and I'm looking to the next to me, turn to my left, and the countryside is flying by as I run. And I'm like, wow, I am like really doing something here. I'm like really moving. But I'm getting worn out. I'm getting tired. I can't run anymore. What happens in the 6th and 7th step is that the picture gets pulled back just a little bit, right? That my perspective on things just gets a little bigger. And what I see is that I'm running on a treadmill. And the treadmill's on a train. So I am under the complete illusion that the running that I'm doing has anything to do with the motion that I'm making in the world. I think that the effort I'm exerting, fear, shame, envy, anger, I feel like those things I'm doing are getting me somewhere. That I'm moving forward, that I'm being drawn, that I'm being propelled in my life as the result of all of this stuff I'm doing. Turn off the treadmill. What happens is, I see that the train is still moving. And what happens when we recognize that our lives are being propelled without our doing? What happens when I realize that I can stop exerting all of this useless energy in order to just simply live, and instead I can enjoy the ride? Now all of a sudden I'm on the train, and I just like walk around and hang out with people. I see if somebody needs help. I can be part of life because I'm not so consumed with trying to run the show. I'm not so consumed with trying to, well, let's see. I want new shoes. I've got two options, right? I really like this guy's shoes right here. I feel envious. What does the envy mean? How does envy serve me? Well, what if I wasn't envious? I bet there's a lot of people who would say if you're not envious, you're probably not going to go get those shoes. You're probably not going to end up with what you want unless you have a feeling of envy. Because all our lives, that's what we've done. All our lives, we've relied on these tools to point us in the direction that we think we need to go. Now, the reason that any of that is important is because when those things are in my life, when shame and envy and anger, when fear, resentment, when those things are the tools that I'm using, when those things are alive and well in my life, then I'm blocked from the sunlight of the Spirit. I'm no longer capable of being in the presence and the experience of God. And what do we know about the experience and the presence of God? It's the thing that's keeping me sober. So it's all of a sudden vitally important that all of those things in my life get cleared out of the way. What the steps have done for me is the steps have cleared those things in the way that are useless. And they've allowed me to just have this experience that's already going on with me. I love doing this with people that are new to the program. And they say something like, you sit down in the second or third time and going through the book and you get to that part about the second step and about God. They say, I don't know. I don't know if I believe in the power greater than myself. I said, well, let me show you a little trick. Something my sponsor showed me. I said, put out your hand. Okay? Anybody can try this if you want to. I said, all right, now flip your hand over. Okay, got it. Yeah, I can do that. Now flip it back. Okay, I can do that. Great, so you can follow pretty simple instructions. Like you can tell yourself what to do, right? Yeah, totally. Okay. Great, put your hand on your heart. Yeah, feel it beating. Okay, now stop your heart. Oh, you can't? No? Yeah, that's because there's a power operating in your life bigger than you. The force of your own life is a power beyond your control. Like all we ever need to do to feel the presence of God is experience the life that's inside us already. That's it. My breath, my heartbeat. This is a power beyond my control. This is a power greater than myself. Now, in whatever way I can conceive of that, but for me, just to immediately connect me to what's actually going on in my own life, I'm there. There's the primary purpose in AA, and I love talking about the primary purpose in AA, which is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I'll be honest, it kind of seems like really, that's what my life is going to be. Like stay sober. I don't know. I kind of have big plans. Until you think about what that really means, what's the implication of that idea about staying sober and helping other alcoholics to achieve sobriety? The only way that I will stay sober, as an alcoholic, is to be constantly having a transformative spiritual experience. That means that my life, the instruction for my entire life, is to constantly have my mind blown wide open. Like, just keep having miracles in your life. You must. I love that. I love being instructed to have miracles in my life. And then share those with other people. Share that experience with other people. There's a part at the end of the 12 step and the 12 and 12 that says, ambition is not what we thought it was. True ambition is a deep desire to live usefully and walk humbly under the grace of God. And what does that mean? What does it mean to walk humbly? I thought when I got to AA, I thought humble was small. I thought humble meant like me. Oh, poor me, no, don't let me bother you. That was humble. My sponsor said, So humble is accepting the place that you take in the world. Humble is recognizing what your true strengths and talents are and being willing to stand up and step into that role. It is incredibly important to be right size, but sometimes the right size is big. Sometimes it is not our job to be little people. Listen, we have had the absolute miracle of having the grace of God come into our lives and do for us what we could not do for ourselves. Now we get to share that with everybody. When it's an alcoholic, it means that maybe there's a chance that they can find the solution that we found. When it's not an alcoholic, it means we can just make their day better. I had my sister's wedding this past weekend. It was an absolutely beautiful experience. And 8 years ago, I was at my brother's wedding, and I was wasted. And I was talking to somebody about it, and they said, what was the difference between the two weddings? And I said, I don't know, like my brother's wedding, to be honest, I had a lot of fun. It was a good time until I blacked out and took off my pants and my mom had to drive me home. That was awkward. But up until then, I was having fun. I was out on the dance floor, really living. My brother asked me to be his best man, except that he had one stipulation, which was that I couldn't drink until after I was given the toast. And then he sort of made that, and then he said, you know what, actually, I'm also going to ask somebody else to be the best man. I just want you to have help. And that's the kind of brother that I was. Completely unreliable. I was not somebody that you could depend on. I mean, I was nice and loving, but I was undependable. And at my sister's wedding, her and her now husband asked me to officiate the wedding. They asked me to marry them. And I had an absolutely beautiful experience. I was able to show up and help and get stuff done and help my sister set up all the tents and the lights and make it beautiful, and then get up in front of all these people and say some really beautiful, heartfelt things about my sister and her husband. And so fun isn't really the differential. That there was a little bit of fun in both of them. But the way that I was able to show up and be of service to my sister and to my family was absolutely extraordinary. And that's what AA has given me. AA has given me, in this path to God, AA has given me the ability to show up and be present in my friends and in my families and in other people's lives. And I'm so grateful that I get that opportunity, and it's so amazing to be here. I feel really grateful to be here and to have had a chance to talk to you guys tonight. So thanks so much, Sharon.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.